I went from university straight to read the Megillah, and I walked out and I didn't have time to dress up. Like, I just went in my clothes, and someone said to me, "Oh my God, that's hilarious. You wearing the INC clothes, you're wearing the opposition. What a great dress up Purim costume." And I said, "No, this is not the opposition. This is the political party that I belong to."
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the Changemaker series here at the base, conversations with none other than Robert Katz. The purpose of this particular series, to inspire us all to do better, to do more good, while at the same time acknowledging the contribution of those who are in fact making a difference in a very positive way. This evening we have a very special guest, Gabriella Nachama Farber, and she is involved in also most interesting work, and we look forward to hearing more about her activities in the realm of student activism here in South Africa. Without further ado, Robert Katz.
Thank you, Rabbi, and a warm welcome to our guests. As always, to our guests, please feel very, very free at any point in time to use the chat show in the comments, and to the point that those questions or comments are relevant, I will most certainly pose them to our guest. When I look back to my youth in years to come, I don't want to have to tell my children I was one of the people who kept to the side and stayed silent. I want to tell them that as a woman in a democratic South Africa, I led. So says Gabby Farber, student activist. Gabby, welcome to our show. It's an absolute pleasure and delight to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Very, very poignant and pressing words, and I think throughout Jewish people's history, and I want to focus on Jewish activism here. Russian Revolution, American Civil Rights Movement, Paris student rights of 1968. The one common thread amongst all of those across different continents, different causes, different continents, is a very, very strong Jewish student leadership element amongst all three. What made you get involved? Maybe talk a little bit about your background, about your history. What was the burning desire to get involved in student activism?
I think to start off, definitely from the beginning, to say that if someone would have told me that this is my life about 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have absolutely laughed in their face and said, "You've got the wrong person." I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa, and went to Yeshiva College, a religious Zionist school, and it was only girls. I went to Bnei Akiva. I then went to MTA for a gap year, and then came back to South Africa. And all those
Maybe,
years...
Can I just interrupt you just for 1 minute? When we talk about MTA and Yeshiva, I probably think the bulk, but not all the people listening in are Jewish people, so they're not familiar with these terms. To us, it rolls off our tongue. but if you don't mind, I'll stop you and just ask you. So if you can just explain what's a yeshiva and what's MTA.
Sure. So firstly, B'nai Akiva is a religious Zionist youth movement where a majority of the Jewish kids in Johannesburg and Cape Town, South Africa go to. Okay. I was in that youth movement since since grade 3. All the way I still am in that youth movement. We then, the youth movement provides a program to go to Israel for a year on a leadership program where you go to a religious seminary, which is an institution located in the Old City in Jerusalem, where you study religious texts. And you learn about your Jewish history, your Jewish identity, and it's mainly by different rabbis and rebbetzins, which are Jewish pastors and preachers. And you spend the whole day learning Jewish texts. And I spent 2 years there, and it was just the most incredible program. But why I'm mentioning all these things is because up until I came to university, I was very secluded. I lived in, I had never become friends with anyone that wasn't Jewish, that wasn't white, and I loved my Judaism. I was and am and will always be a very religious Jew, very proud of Israel. All these different spaces, they, I think, pushed me to be proud of my identity, to be a proud Jew in every space that I find myself. They ensured me that I would have the confidence to change the world. You know, every day at school, in all the programs, at all the camps of B'nai Akiva, they would talk about Jewish leadership, what it means to be a Jewish leader in the world, the obligations we have in this world, and also what it means to be a bystander, that we can't watch and just see what's going on around us and do nothing about it. So they were constantly encouraging us to take an active part in society. However, this society at this stage in my life was only Jewish society, Jewish organizations, Jewish youth movements, Jewish schools, Jewish programs. And then I came back from my gap year and I went to Wits University. And it was my first day at Wits. And we go there and we're sitting in our first lecture, me and my friends. And just the South African Jewish experience for most people, generalizing here, you go into your lecture hall and you sit with the Jewish kids. Or if there's no Jewish people in your course, you sit with the white kids in the lecture. And we're sitting there and we all a bit nervous, don't really know what's going on. And next thing, people storm into the lecture. And they start singing and screaming and they're saying, raise the black child and free education for all, and none of us know what is going on. We are terrified for our lives. We quickly run out and just go to the nearest coffee shop we can find, and you see all the white kids gathering. And at that point, I remember even thinking, oh my God, that's so racist. Why did they say the word black child? And this continued, these protests continued for a few days and then a few weeks. And it was crazy for me to see the experience of white Jewish kids and mainly white students at Wits, that there'd be this massive protest going on and you just see the white kids walk past. Don't ask questions, don't get involved. There's no white kid in sight in the protest. And no one, everyone's like, it's like there's that elephant in the room and no one's talking about it or discussing it. And you go into your lecture and you do your lecture and then you go home. That was as much as the student experience was for us at Wits. And at the time I was in B'nai Akiva, I was the vice chair for Joburg. And so I couldn't take on another role. But I remember saying to one of the older students, Jewish students, I said, what can we do? Like, this is terrible. Why is no one getting involved? Is this really going to be like my university experience? I'm studying law. I'm going to be here for 5 years, 5 or 6 years. And I just feel like such an outsider. I feel like I'm visiting here, but I know that I'm going to spend so much time. And she said, get involved in soldiers. At the time, I wasn't able to because I was too overcapacitated. But later on in the year, I signed up for soldiers.
No, before you go, I want to ask you a question. On day one, first minute of the first round, right? You're in the midst of this protest. You've never come across a protest like this in your entire life. Never mind the fact that you turned away and whatever, as you just described. What was your feeling? Was it a shock to the system? Was it scary? What did you feel when you heard this protest?
As if you were in a movie, literally a movie. You know, like the movies that you see of apartheid, or the videos you get taught in history, or the pictures you see on the newspaper. It's like not real. There's security everywhere. Things are shut down. Everyone's tense. You're scared. You don't know what's going. So on the one hand, you're scared. But on the other hand, there was this thing in me like, no, like I'm intrigued. Something's going on here and I hate the feeling that I'm not involved. I hate the feeling that I'm just walking past this, and I really don't like the feeling that this is just Black people and no whites are getting involved and white people are pretending that nothing's going on. And it was a very uncomfortable feeling. I would say that the best thing to describe it was being uncomfortable, going into university and feeling uncomfortable and having so many questions and having no answers, no direction, no one to talk to. My parents didn't know what was going on. They were just saying, guys, like maybe don't go to university, let's stay home for the next few days. But the general command, unsaid command, was you don't get involved. It's dangerous. Don't get involved. It's not our issue.
So up until this point in time in the life of a young Gabi Farber, very protected at Yeshiva College, where spent 2 years in a religious seminary in Jerusalem. Life's great, little bubble. Nothing's pricking that little bubble. You now go to Wits University and there's an explosion of emotion, correct?
Completely.
Right. Now what happens?
So as the year goes on, I'll end up becoming chairperson of, I sign up, there were elections for soldiers. And I thought, you know what?
So just for those who don't know, just what is soldiers?
Is the South African Union of Jewish Students, which represents all Jewish students on all campuses in South Africa. Their main aims is to protect Jewish students from any form of anti-Semitism, and then secondly, to create somewhat of a Jewish life on campus. So I had never been involved. I wasn't even a member of soldiers at the time, but there were elections and I thought, let me just sign up to be part of the committee. I probably won't get on, but let me just try. And I remember I went into the interview and I said to them, guys, I just want to be upfront because I'm always a person, I like to be upfront with people and honest. And I'm very quick to be honest about my strengths and weaknesses. I said, I want to get involved in soldiers so that I can do some, nice charity work and have cool parties for Jewish students. But I need to tell you from the beginning, I know nothing about politics. I don't do politics, and I know nothing about Israel. I'm a full-blown Zionist, but I am a religious Zionist, which means I don't know things like the Balfour Declaration and the treaties and the history. I just have a love for Israel because it's my Jewish religious homeland. And they were like, it's fine. Next thing, they phone me and they say, Gabi, we want to say, well done, you got voted in as chair of soldiers for the Wits campus. So I was freaking out, chairperson. And I was like, what is going on? Like,
now, chair is the head of soldiers for Wits, is that correct?
Yes.
So the people who interviewed you, you now became their boss, so to speak.
Exactly. It was the old committee, and now I was taking on the new Wits committee.
And you'd had no experience whatsoever being on anything?
Nothing. No political experience. I was always that kid who, when there was a lecture on Israel's history, I would bunk it. Or I did not take history for school. I wasn't that type. I'm always the kid. I love doing projects and parties and community work and volunteering. But historical nuances and politics, it's too much fighting for me. It's not what I'm interested in. So I was a bit confused. Should I take this position? Shouldn't I? And my dad was like, Gabi, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. You have to take it. And I said to them, guys, but like, I need you to still again, no, I don't do politics and I don't know anything about Israel. They said, it's fine. Don't worry. We'll help you. And I started getting involved. And because I was involved in student situations and being more on the ground and getting more involved, I was then able to be more aware about what was going on campus and at Wits. And I started to actually love politics and to see that before I had always been involved in NGOs. I was involved in like a Tears Foundation, which is for women abuse, Yeshiva, and all different NGOs. I'd never entered the realm of politics. And I began to see that it was politics that would be able to create the change. And so I kept my duties as soldiers. But while I was doing that, I started to get more and more involved in the PYA. The PYA is the Progressive Youth Alliance, which is the political alliance made up of the Young Communist League, the ANC Youth League, and the SASCO, which is the South African, it's like the Union for Students. And I didn't really know so much what they were about, but what was very, very clear was on campus, they were the change makers. They were the ones who would be a student's first friend. They were the ones that would make sure that no students were left behind. And the following year, we're now in the next year, my second year, the beginning, and protest starts coming up again. And now
I want to interrupt you 1 second there.
Sure.
We're talking now about the PYA, the Progressive Youth Alliance. When you said that they're the ones that make sure that no student is left behind.
Yes.
Which students are not left behind? All students or certain students?
I would say all students.
But left behind in what?
So what is made very clear, although there is ability to remain ignorant and naive when going to Wits, but if you actually have any moral obligation or consciousness, you see that there are many students that are left behind. And when we say left behind, it means that they don't have access to certain privileges that white students or more privileged students have. So this can range from fees, for paying for your fees, for residents having a place to stay, food, it can be textbooks, it can be laptops, and there are just this overwhelming number of students who are being left behind, where there's no one. Why I use the word left behind is because there's no one there that's being the support, that's making sure that they stay up to what's going on. Now, why this is because we live in a post-apartheid South Africa. And during apartheid, Black students, Black people were not allowed to go to tertiary education, to universities. And if they were under heavy restrictions and they were the minority. But now in a post-apartheid democratic South Africa, we have a new system where Black students, all students, race, religion, culture, are allowed to come into these institutions. But when you go to WITS and you see a Black student sitting next to you, you need to realize that they are probably the first person in their family to ever walk into a university. Their parents, their grandparents, their siblings, their teachers never went to university. And so when a person has a problem, for example, say I don't know what to do in a situation, I go to my parents and I say, Mom, Dad, what do I do here? Or I go to my communal leaders, Mom, guys, what do I do here? And because they've had that previous experience and they have certain privileges, such as a job, such as an income, such as an education, they're able to help me. Whereas these other students don't have such a privilege of having a support structure. They are the first people to go and lead this new way, a new future. When they're there and when they are left behind, you're not just leaving them, you're leaving their families, their communities. If I give an example, the current SRC president, which is the Student Representative Council of WITS, he's the only one from his school that made it to university. So these people, when they get to WITS, they are paving a new way from despair to hope, a new future for themselves, for their families, and for our country. But SASCO, which the PYA, is the only, in my opinion, structure that enables them to succeed on this journey. And
okay,
so
I understand. Now, thank you for clarifying that. Now, you then became the first Jewish student in more than 2 decades, amazing, to take a position on the ANC-aligned PYA. And when you stood for elections, you were the second most popular candidate. So before we move on to the next question, I just want you just to explain to our viewers how you managed to get the second most popular vote and the first Jewish student in 2 decades. How did you go about doing it? What special talents did you bring to the party that number 3 to 10 didn't have?
I think, so to start with the first Jewish, that I was the first Jewish person to run on such a slate. Firstly, also how the Student Representative Council works is we get deployed by different political parties. So you go into this election and the political party sends you in. So you can either go in as an EFF member, as an ANC member, as a DA member, and then you get voted in with your political party. So I chose, as from the previous answer, that this political party was the political party that I knew to belong to, because honestly, they were the ones making the change and making the difference. And I was involved in the protests, I was involved in the programs, and I think I did. I worked hard, I showed my commitment to the causes. And then they asked me to, the political leadership, they asked me to run for SRC elections. There were 3 people, Sisamanda, Ebo, and Sabelo. And recently, Sabelo and Sisamanda have passed away. But I would just like to say in their memory that I would never be able to be the person I am without them. And also Ebo, he's like an older brother to me. And they said, Gabi, we want you to know, we want you to run on these elections to represent yourself, your Jewish community, the white population, and obviously the ANC in the Student Representative Council. We believe you have the right qualities, the right intentions, and you really will be paving a new way for history. And it was I was in a shock, quite overwhelmed with the request, but, you know, where the political leaders see you fit, you have to go. It's not really questionable. They are much wiser than I am, with much more experience. And they said, Gabi, the elections are going to be hard. The campaign isn't going to be easy. You're going to get very attacked. But we promise you, we will be there through you. We believe in you. You can do this. And the elections, the campaign was terrible. Firstly, it was COVID, so we weren't allowed on campus. Secondly, I thought going in, people are going to not vote for me because I'm white. There hasn't been a white student on the SRC for, I think, like 7 years. And when they were, it was because they were DA. And, it's something that's foreign. At WITS, there is a lot of antagonism towards white people. And I just thought, I'll try my best, but I kind of was like, this isn't really going to work. Like, I'll try, but I'm not going to get in. And during the election process, you have to campaign like any political campaign. And it was surprising to me that not one person had an issue with me being white. Everyone had an issue with me being a Zionist. And this was something...
I want to just interrupt you for 1 minute there, because I want to bring my question in, and then you can answer this question. There's a difference between Zionism and anti-Semitism. We all know that there's a very, very big difference between Zionism and anti-Semitism. But in answering your question, I'd like to know, and I'd like to answer, I want you to answer the question in twofold. Number one, you showed me earlier some of the WhatsApps that you got, and they were horrifically anti-Semitic, horrific. It was terrible to even read. So how did you get through the process of all this anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, etc.? And the second question, and when you've answered that question, is, as a religious Zionist, how did you feel joining the ANC, which is hardly sing a tikva on Yom Ha'atzmaut?
I think what got me through, it really is the comrades. The comrades it means the members of the political party. I like even get emotional talking about it. They were there through every step. It really was horrific. I had people following me on campus. I would get onto a bus and students would scream, "Everyone, look, there's the Zionist. We're not getting onto the bus." I would have to, eventually, the comrades said, "Gabi, you have to wear a hoodie because it's dangerous for you. We don't know who's going to come and hurt you. So wear a hoodie. When we walk certain places, you put the hoodie on so no one can see that it's you, and then you can take it off. When we had a campaign, you go and knock on the doors." And I remember I had to stand on the one side of the door so that when we would open, there could be someone here to check if it was a Muslim student or not. And if it was a Muslim student, I'd have to hide, and if not, I could talk. And I would walk into the residences, and people would say, "Oh, are you the Zionist? We don't want to talk to you." And people were accusing me on Twitter about supporting a genocide. They would take photos of me and my fellow comrades and attack the comrades and say, "You guys are sellouts to the apartheid struggle. You sellouts to the liberation movement of Black African people because you are friends with a Zionist." The political, the provincial and national political parties of the alliance sent in, there were 4 state political statements that were written about me during the time. One from the Young Communist League saying that there's white farmers who are being trained in Israel to kill Black people while they're running with the Zionist. They banned the political leadership of SASCO, which allowed me to be part of the organization, just because they allowed a Zionist in. And I would trend on Twitter. I would get phone calls. the ANC had phoned the university to say, listen, please don't allow her to run. And then I got called into a meeting, and they said, by the provincial leadership, and they said, listen, Gabi, explain yourself. And I explained that for me, I was never political about Israel. I grew up in a religious Zionist community, school, youth organization, where for me to say I'm a Jew and a Zionist is the same. It's not a controversial thing for me to say. It's my identity. When I pray every day to God, I face Israel. When I have my most religious, spiritual revelations, it was in the land of Israel. I've been going on holiday to Israel since I was 8 years old. This is part of who I am. And I explained that it can't be that you guys don't allow me to be part of the political party that runs our country. I'm not Israeli. I'm not a soldier in the IDF. I'm a Jewish, religious, Zionistic South African. And now you saying that I'm not allowed to be part of the organization, the political organization that runs our country, merely because of my religious, ideological beliefs. And I said, that is discrimination. That is discrimination against religion. And they said, Gabi, listen, either you run and you wear a kafir, and you come up with a statement saying that Israel does not have the right to exist and it is an apartheid state, and that you completely disassociate yourself from Zionism, or you step down. But we can't force you to do anything, because the ANC has policies that you're not allowed to, a higher branch isn't allowed to control lower branch. So the province can't control its branch. And I just also explained to them that, guys, I need you to understand, I'm no radical person. I'm not in the ANC so I can start waving Israeli flags. I'm here because I want to help, because I want to help South Africa. I want to help my country. I want to help to liberate Black people and do whatever I can in that process. And when it comes to my Zionism, I believe in a two-state solution. And I believe that the Palestinian people, just like the Jews, have the right to exist and self-determine themselves. So do they, because they are humans. And any loss of life, any destruction, any war, any violence is a terrible thing in this world, whether it's against Jews or Israelis, or it's against Palestinians. And I said that, you know, as a Jew, we have to love everyone like we love ourselves. And I love humanity. I love white people, Black people, Jews, Palestinians, because I know that every person was created b'tselem Elokim, in God's image. But at the end of the day, I'm a Zionist. I'm a religious Zionist, and I'm proud of it. And no one can ever take that away from me, because that is who I am and that is my identity. And I went home and I phoned the comrades and I said, you know what, guys, I can't take the pressure anymore. I really feel like people are discriminating against me. They want me to turn my back on who I am, turn my back on my community, and they're not allowing me to be who I want to be. And all I want to do is help. Or I don't need to be in this political space. I don't need to be in politics. I don't need to help students. I'm doing it because I want to, but it's too hard. And I sent in my resignation, and the political leaders and the people I was running with called me in the next day. And they said, Gabi, you cannot do this. You don't know what you're going to do for future generations of Jewish people. They will use this precedent for years and years to come and say that there was once a Jewish girl that was very committed to the cause, but because she was a Zionist, she couldn't be in leadership positions. And they said, I realized these people here, my friends, my comrades, they are willing to fight for me as a Jew. But if they're willing to do it, then I have to be able to fight. And we went on the campaign. I said that I'm going to run. And soldiers and the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, which is the governing body of our community, supported me every step of the way. Zev Kringle, I'll recall him at 11 o'clock at night, sobbing my eyes out from the stress and the pressure. And soldiers ran a campaign to help get all the Jewish students to vote for me. And we continued. And it was, I remember the night before, when we were waiting for the elections, we all sat, we did a prayer. They did the comrades did their prayer. I said a Jewish prayer, and we all sat holding each other's hands. And we said, like, you know, whatever happens, happens. We know we tried their best. And I said to them, guys, whether I win or not, I'll never forget what you did for me and what you did for my community, and how you stood up for justice and you stood up for other people. And I landed up coming second highest in the whole of Wits University. And I still can't believe it. You know, even sending you those messages of all the hate that I got, I think it was definitely Hashem who helped me get through it. It was my friends, it was my family, it was the Board of Deputies, it was soldiers, and it was the comrades, because it was terrible.
Now, before we move on, having heard you, looking back, do you regret having to go through this, or would you go through it again if you knew what you were going through from the beginning?
I don't regret anything. I don't regret anything besides, at some points, I doubted myself, and I doubted my potential of getting through it. And I doubted who I was. And it's made me prouder of who I am and what I stand for, because it's so easy to say I'm a religious Zionist. So easy for me to say I'm an ANC member. But what does it mean when you have to fight with everything that you have in your body to say those few words? And I look at the change that I'm able to make through this. I'm able to have discussions every single day.
No, I want to get to that later. I want to get to that later. So now So now, Gabi, we've now heard the reaction of the anti-Semites and anti-Zionists, and the comrades. Within the Jewish community, reading some of the literature which I was sent, it seemed quite positive. I know just before we went on the show, you went to Purim, and I'd like you to share the Purim story on a lighter note. But you've touched on the support from the Jewish community. Maybe you just want to elaborate a little bit more and then end off with a Purim story.
I mean, there was definitely some people that didn't support it, and some people that asked funny questions. And I think it's also important to know that there will always be those people, whether it's in B'nai Akiva, whether it's in Jewish organizations, non-Jewish organizations, there will always be non-supporters, because that's the beauty of the world, difference. But on the general, the community was so supportive. I remember Wendy Khan would send me flowers before Shabbos. I had everyone phoning me every day to check up how I am, and I still do. I still have people always during these protests this past year phoning, checking up, calling my parents, sending things to the house. It's an incredible community that we are in, because also what I want to touch on is the PYA was previously aligned with BDS, which is the Boycott, Divestment Sanction. The PYA, the organization that I'm part of, BDS, the Boycott, Divestment Sanction against Israel. This was the same political party that years ago, when there was an Israeli pianist, smashed the piano. And this was the same organization that runs Israel Apartheid Week every year. But I think it was incredible of the Jewish community that they were able to forgive what this organization had done to Jewish students in the previous years. and to see a new way. And I think that's a Jewish value. Reconciliation is a Jewish value. If you look what's going on now with Israel and the United Arab Emirates, it's reconciliation. It's about saying, we know what happened in the past, but let's move towards a better future. And yes, this is happening small on BITS campus. And my biggest dream is that someday this will happen between Israel and the Palestinians. Because we have to engage with people that sometimes we disagree with. We have to have those hard conversations, because it's those hard conversations that are going to push us to grow.
Purim, tell the story about Purim.
I remember I had just gone from university straight into Purim, which is generally my life, going from, sometimes I say I feel like I'm Hannah Montana, living two extreme lives. I went from university straight to read the Megillah at Yeshiva College, and I walked out and I didn't have time to dress up. Like, I just went in my clothes, and someone said to me, "Oh my God, that's hilarious. You wearing the INC clothes, you're wearing the opposition. What a great dress up Purim costume." And I said, no, this is not the opposition. This is the political party that I belong to. And I think sometimes when I go into Evangelica's, the kosher bakery restaurant, everyone looks at me funny in my ANC stuff, but I'm proud. I'm proud to go and buy my kosher food in ANC regalia.
Okay,
you know,
good.
Because this is who I am.
Okay. Gabby, I just want to pause for 1 second. We do have a question from the floor, which I just do want to pose for you. Shalom, everyone. A big shout out to you, Gabriella. First, the YCL lecture at WITS. YCL is?
The Young Communist League.
Young Communist League lecture at WITS with Minister of COGTA, Dr. Nkosana Dlamini Zuma, and Chris Hani went well yesterday, and we thank your fellow PYA leadership and comrades for having organized it. My question to you, it's no doubt that tomorrow's leaders are young activists of today. No doubt. Given the opportunity of the renewal of all youth formations under the umbrella of the ANC, what kind of relationship could be established with soldiers?
I think going forward, it's about creating a relationship where we find common goals. As Jewish people, we have been an afflicted people, an afflicted nation for years and years. If anyone can talk on discrimination, on affliction, on violence, it's the Jews. Whether it was in Russia, whether it was the Holocaust, all over the world, we were strangers in the land. And we experienced terrible hatred, terrible inequality. And when we see what Black people are going through currently in this country, it's, you know, we say that we in post-apartheid. If you look in the lives of the general Black person, there's nothing in their life that says we are in post-apartheid. There's poverty, there's inequality, there's discrimination. And I think as Jewish students, we have the moral obligation, the religious obligation to join in that cause. Because so many people, they always say, I remember in school when we learned about the Holocaust, that, oh, it's terrible how the world just watched by. And my question to the Jewish community is, what atrocities in this world are you watching by? What atrocities in this world are we as a Jewish people watching by? And I'm not saying that apartheid and Holocaust is the same. In no way am I saying that. But I'm saying that we know what it means to suffer. And so when we see other people suffering, we have a duty, an obligation. It's not a nice thing to do. It's an obligation. It's a have to. It's a commandment from Hashem to get involved and to make change. And I think that's the soldiers and the PYA, the YCL, or Jewish community and the ANC can come together to help each other, to benefit. Look at, Discovery is Adrian Gore. We have Stephen Kossoff. We have the Angel Network, the Jewish Board of Deputies. We have incredible Jewish leaders. And it's so sad that this relationship between the Jewish community and the ANC have been lost for so many years. Because there are things that we both believe in. If you look at the Freedom Charter, that is what I've been taught with the Torah. You know, there are so many values that are shared there. But just because of Israel, this relationship has been absolutely destroyed and hijacked for all these years. If we look in in the apartheid struggle, we see majority of those white people were Jews. You had your Ruth First going there and leading women, leading the country. And I don't want to be the only white, Jewish, Zionistic female in the ANC. I want to be able to not be recognizable, to not be weird or it's someone different. This should be a common thing, to get involved and to bring change to the world that we live in, the societies that God has placed us in.
Yeah. Interesting. Elie Wiesel, Zecher Livrocha, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, survived Auschwitz. He came to South Africa in 1975. And in his book, All Rivers Run to the Sea, then that was up until his time of liberation from Auschwitz. And then he wrote a sequel, And the Sea is Never Full. It's from Kohelet. And in All Rivers Running, and in The Sea is Never Full, his life post Auschwitz, up until the time he got Nobel Peace Prize, he said that he found South Africa to be a land of captivating beauty, very, very friendly people, smiley faces wherever he went. But when he went into the townships, he turned his face so as to not to see South Africa. I think there's a lot of it still around today, unfortunately. To your point. Okay. Right. So I've got one or two questions I still want to ask you. I think you've answered the question, why is it important for Jews to get involved? And I think I've elaborated on Elie Wiesel, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. We don't have much more time, Gabi, and I do want to do justice to what you want to achieve. So I've got three more questions. Paradigm shifts in your own life and your own views. You've obviously come from a very, very, very sheltered Jewish bubble in Northeast Johannesburg, carried on in Jerusalem. Big change coming your way, Wits University. You've spent the last 45 minutes telling us all about it. But is there any one or two big facts, bombers that have really changed your life, for the better, that we can learn from?
I think that life is great. I've been, growing up in South Africa, in this secluded, very sheltered life. I always saw it as black and white. Things are either good or things are either bad. And going into this space, I realized, I guess I actually started to see that in seminary, where they showed me that Judaism portrays truth as multidimensional, and you can have so many different truths at the same time, and that's the beauty of truth, is that it can be so complex and so multidimensional. And then I came into this political space and saw the reality of it. A lot of people want to say the ANC is corrupt. And they don't want to acknowledge anything good that the ANC has done for our country and continues to do for our country. And I'm never saying don't acknowledge that the ANC is corrupt. There are people in there that are corrupt. But that is the exact reason why we need to get involved. Because often, I think another thing was that I constantly found myself in places, you sit at a Shabbos table and people are complaining. They complain about the government and they complain about the country, and they don't do anything about it. And it's about getting your hands dirty, being in places that aren't comfortable. I have to interact with people from BDS on a day-to-day basis. People that I know literally disagree with who I am. But that's life. Not everyone's going to agree on things, and that's the beauty of it. Because I can't ask people to tolerate my views if I don't tolerate theirs. And another thing is realizing that you can change the world. So many people want to tell you it's so cliche, stop believing that, who are you, this little Jewish kid, you know, like you're overconfident. You can change the world. You can make a difference, whether it be one person in your life or getting involved and getting into politics and changing the country. But it's your obligation to do it. People need to look at South Africa and think, why am I staying here? Am I staying here so that I can live in a nice big house and go to a nice Jewish day school and have a maid? Am I staying here because I believe that I can contribute to the African project? And I'm telling you that all you 107 people on this Zoom, you can make a difference to that African project. You can be the next Ruth First. You can be the next Herzl. You can be anyone who you want to be. And it's not impossible. I didn't get here because I'm some amazing person with extraordinary qualities. You know, you asked, what did you have to make the second time? I didn't have anything different from the qualities that you have. I'm a human being. But I took that first step of asking someone at a protest, what are you protesting about and how can I get involved?
Yeah.
It's just those small steps, those small conversations from human being to human being. And that's what I've learned. And the second thing that I've learned is see color. On that first day when they walked in and they said, raise the black child, and I thought that that was racist because I thought we mustn't see that people have different color skins. We have to acknowledge the reality of our country, that we are not the same as a black person. Because a black person has gone through very different experiences to us, the white people. But that in no way means that you, as a white person, are any way superior or different in a sense that you deserve something more than they do. We are human beings, but we have different experiences in different cultures, and we need to embrace that difference. Embrace the languages of our country. When you see someone say, thank you, ngiyabonga, malibongwe, sawubona, tumelang, hello, shalom. Embrace the beauty of our rainbow nation, but realize that it's a rainbow and people come with different paths, different pain, different suffering. Be sensitive to that. Acknowledge it. Because if we can't acknowledge it, we're not going to realize the challenges that we face and the implications that they have on our society and our duty to change them.
Right. Gabby, we've got two more questions from the floor. One, I think you've answered. It's from a rabbi. Well done, Gabby, for all you're doing. Are you able to stand up to the comrades when and if they slander Israel? I think you have answered that question, unless you want to add anything more. And the answer is an unequivocal yes. We've got another question. I'm not going to say who it's from. You may work it out, but I'm not going to say who it's from. Wow, Gabby, I'm so proud of you. You remind me of myself 10 plus years or more ago, but I didn't have your tenacity. My question to you is, how do you ignore the fact that ANC policy is anti-Semitic and its roots are deep? I love your tenacity. Mazel tov, in the name. Sorry, excuse us the name. We don't say names over here, but your question has been posed.
For me, I realize where the ANC is coming from. And I think sometimes we so quick to judge, and every time someone says something horrible to you, someone says something horrible to you, your immediate reaction as humans, we retract ourselves. We say, oh, I don't want to get, they're terrible. But it's important to always understand the other side of the story. And the reality is that during the apartheid times, the PLO and the ANC, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, they were very close. And those white people that I spoke about that were Jews in the ANC, they were really badly treated by the South African Jewish community. It's the reality. And Israel supported the Nats, yes, but it's complex because if you look at Nelson Mandela when he needed to leave the country, El Al, the Israeli airline, got him a flight out. So things are complex. But there is a long-standing history with the Palestinian people and the ANC. And another thing is that the Muslims, they really got so involved in the ANC at a university level, which then took them to province and nationally. And in a way, in my opinion, they hijacked the ANC because they didn't allow any Jews to participate in the ANC. Whether they were Zionists or not, Jews were not allowed to participate in ANC politics. And above that, I think there also is a sense that Jews aren't educated about Israel. And when I say that, I'm including myself. We don't want to educate ourselves on the history and the politics and the treaties and the nuances. It's a very nuanced, complex issue. And it doesn't have simple, easy answers, yes and no, and black and white. But we have to be educated if this is our identity. And we have to learn and grow so that when someone says something, we can stand up for ourselves. But the most important thing is to have hard conversations. I have been able to get here without knowing what the Balfour Declaration is, because I've had conversations from human to human. And I haven't gone in there wanting to change people's minds, because you can't go into a conversation with that agenda. You have to go into a conversation with trying to understand each other as human beings, acknowledging the historical background and experiences that the other person comes with to the conversation, and not being afraid to say who you are. And if you have those things, then those things can help you create relationships. And yes, the ANC says things that I dislike, but so does Bibi Netanyahu's government. So do my parents, my friends say things I don't like.
Are your parents
But they're still my friends and they still my
parents? Are your parents listening in on this call? Or not?
I think so.
All right.
But it's about realizing people are different.
100%. Before I wrap up, is there any final comment? I think you've answered all my questions, message to the Jewish community, paradigm shifts, etc. We didn't talk about fees protest. Maybe that's for another session. Just some of the feedback I'm getting, Kol HaKavod, inspiring talk. Gabby, anything final you'd like to say before we wrap up? One sentence conclusion.
Be the change you want to see in the world. As cliche as it is, don't complain and do something about it. You all have the capacity to be change makers, which is the series, and it's a moral, religious obligation that we have as Jews. I'm always happy to talk, to reach out. You can follow me on my Instagram and Facebook logins, and you can ask Rabbi Zilberg too for my number, because it's about talking. It's about connecting as human beings. And just thank you so much to the base and to everyone listening for this opportunity. And we just need to also be appreciative for what we have in this country, for the country we live in, and for the community we belong to.
100%. Gabby, it's been my absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for agreeing to appear on the show. May Hashem bless you, your family, and our wonderful country, South Africa, with much bracha. Should stay safe and healthy and take good care.
Thank you.
Rabbi?
Thanks, Rob. Gabby, what can I say? The truth is there's so much I'd like to say. I want to just isolate one point, if I may, and that has stuck out throughout, and that is your capacity to remain true to who you are through and through. And that's, it's one thing for all of us to be able to live such lives when we live in the lives that we live. But when you take on the task that you've taken on to remain true to your values is something that is beyond special. Hashem should always protect you and continue to give you the courage to stand true to your values in all circumstances. And I just want to say from strength to strength, a very big thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. I want to say as well a very big thank you to my brother once again. His contribution to these webinars, we wouldn't be able to do it without him. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Next Sunday night, Professor Monica Singer, a very special guest indeed. We'll send out all of the details regarding that in conversation with our very own Robert Katz. Have a good evening, everyone. Keep safe, keep healthy, and I hope to see you soon.